Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. Long time no see. We have been on a hiatus, not only writing and getting a process for the book in place, but we've also been out with a lot of illness. So earlier in the year, I apologize. I had a really, really severe sinusitis, which basically where I lost my voice. I was not able to perform a lot of my video content that I do on a regular basis. So thank you so much for hanging in there in my absence. And remember, I do have a large library of video content that you can always stream through, as well as, send inquiries through the message on YouTube here. So thank you so much for your kind words. And I did receive a lot of people who were wondering where I was and things of that nature. So we're feeling back and strong and stronger than ever. So I want to really get back into a lot of our great viewer questions that we have been receiving in the previous couple weeks. So we're really going to go into a little bit more today in terms of understanding the role of projection. I think that this is a really potent and important topic for you to understand, especially when you've been in relationship with very difficult people, either bosses or your parent, a daughter, a sibling. And it is to understand really what the forefather of psychology, Sigmund Freud, really helped to delineate and explain in his, his primer on psychology, and that is the understanding of what projection is. It's basically it's a defense mechanism. It's a way that someone goes about protecting themselves. So projection oftentimes is received through a lot of yelling, a lot of hostility, a lot of negative energy coming at you, like 80 miles an hour. The person is just launching off into a diatribe, a tirade, top of their voice, top of their lungs. You're getting basically yelled at, screamed at, and there's all sorts of finger pointing, fist shaking, blame, 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 and it's all your fault. What's wrong with you? You're a horrible person. You did this, you did that. There's a lot of false accusations going on when we talk about projection. And it's very interesting because, and I've talked about this in earlier videos, but oftentimes the projection is at very crucial crossroads. And we're going to talk about this, how it really specifically, and it's fascinating to me as someone who studies psychology and social psychology, especially in this realm, is to see how very precise and very particular the times when the projection arises. And it's also very interesting to sort of pull apart really what is at play there, because oftentimes the very core issue is at play. In other words, the accusations that the person is dishing up are the very feelings that they have a fear of, and it's actually usually it is their own insecurity which you are then receiving, and they're displacing onto you that you're feeling and that they're saying, which in essence, in actuality, in reality, is what they are feeling, the person who is projecting. But yet they're putting up such a wall, a barrier, this sort of this force, this tsunami force of energy, which you cannot, no matter what you do. People oftentimes, try to get involved and try to process and try to reason and rationale and communicate with a person in the midst of this projection. And it's very uncomfortable because it's usually wrought with a lot of false accusations. So it's a projection is a form of a defense mechanism in which basically this unwanted, uncomfortable feeling that this person is dealing with inside, and it's then pushed onto, displaced, or forced onto another person when they're basically feeling threatened from something going on in their world. And basically, they will accuse the other of that. And so basically, it's a displacement. It's a projection. What's going on within them, they're actually putting onto you. And oftentimes, people who don't understand projection or understand that there's nothing, that they are not the causative factor here, it's something within them. Oftentimes, people who are enmeshed and entangled with these individuals, they find that they're trying to process, that information. They're trying to deal with it logically. Then they do end up buying into, because this causes a lot of crazy making, and the person begins to then, have self-doubt, where that sort of begins to find a place in your heart, where then people then, once they're confronted with a lot of this projection and this negativity, in this finger shaking, you, blame, calling you the names, the false accusations, it's crazy making, it's brainwashing, it's gaslighting. And this then causes the other individual who's on the receiving end of the projection, and this can happen to children. Parents will do this all the time to their children. Oftentimes they'll project their own angry, hostility, impatience, frustration onto the child. You're so bad. You're a troublemaker. You're impossible. You're ridiculous. You're da. And then that child, who is an open sponge, who's trying to process and trying to make amends and trying to work with this caregiver, because this person is their lifeline. This person is, their food, their water, their shelter. It's their everything. So they're trying to then appease and then please the parent, and then begin to, take on and identify with all that negativity and projection. So this is really the formative area and time where a lot of this self-doubt, limiting self-beliefs gets set up to fester and proliferate into a lot of the other negative identities. The I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not quiet enough, I'm not loud enough. The I'm not enoughs that go into everything then begins to be, the origination oftentimes can be created by the self-doubt, and then the lack of self-trust, and then lack of self-confidence, and lack of knowing your strengths and your talents that comes from this experience. So the self-doubt, in other words, this energy is coming at me with such strength and conviction, it must be me, and the self-doubt. Well, and then what can I do then to repair this person? What can I do to appease my caregiver? What can I do to pacify this boss? What can I do to make amends? How can I fix this? How can I? And then the person of empathy begins then to take on and then process and absorb this negative energy. And this can be very depressing. This can be very disappointing. This can cause a great feeling of defeat, in feeling like nothing, you don't matter, you're not important. Nobody then validates your feelings and your experiences, because you're all about that external focus then. The walking on eggshells, the, trying to pacify this crazy making projection individual. And people then, begin to empty themselves out of any sort of good qualities, and then all the affection, all the good times begins to just blow away, as if it doesn't matter, as if it never existed. And then all of a sudden, it's this black or white thinking. You're horrible. All the false accusations. And we're talking about earlier, the projection oftentimes is very close to the source of insecurity. So I find this very fascinating, that the times of projection are often towards the very people with whom they have an insecurity or a wound with, where they have been made vulnerable. In other words, a mother who had who maybe lost their mother, or didn't get to have their wedding day, or didn't have that sort of close connection or that healthy bond. Then they'll begin to project all those unwanted issues that they have experienced because they never worked through it. They'll then project it onto their daughter. And they'll begin to, go into a tirade of, why you are not present. You're not present. You're never here. You don't care about this. You don't care about that. And it's like that person is there. They do care. But what they're doing is they're projecting that feeling of loss onto that individual and then making them do the dirty work or the legwork of trying to process their unwanted feelings for them. So the recipient of the projection is then experiencing and will oftentimes live out the very fear that they do not want to experience. And in other words, they will create in that individual as like a receptacle, a recipient, the very embodiment of what it is that they do not want. In other words, they don't want to be alone. They don't want to be unwed. They don't want to feel isolated. They don't want to feel vulnerable. They don't want to feel weak. They don't want to have their emotions worn on their sleeve. People want people to know their real feelings. And so they'll create the burden and the hurt embodied in the other individual. So for example, a feeling of, I got wedded too early, or something of that nature where they, then weren't able to process certain experiences. Then in the others who they project or scapegoat upon, they'll then create the very embodiment of that, i.e., they'll push away the person so that they will never feel love and never feel lovable and never get married, never have kids. It's all these insecurities that they'll then create within another individual. So they will embody the very fear, the very insecurity, along the exact same issues in the other person. And so, for example, and a psychopath will do this as well. However, in other words, are you, the false accusations, are you texting your boyfriend? Are you going to miss our date? Are you cheating behind my back? Even though you've done nothing to warrant it, then here comes the projection. In other words, all the unwanted feelings then are projected onto another. So the mistake, though, comes when you begin to try to sort it out for them, or you take on the projection. You let the projection win. Don't let the projection win. Don't take it on. Don't just be like a blank screen for this person to play out and harbor all their insecurities. You're not helping yourself and you're not helping them. And this can be very, being brainwashed, gaslighted, and being the object of projection of someone else's false accusations is an extremely, extremely painful place to be. It is very hurtful to have somebody criticize and judge and slander and slam you with false accusations and hurtful, hateful comments that, will leave indelible injuries. And so it's very damaging. And you need to understand that this person is venting out. They have a source within them that's causing this that has nothing to do with you. Do not own the negativity and hostility and anger and rage and all the scowling looks, the slamming doors, the throwing of things, whatever it is. Don't own that negativity. That is theirs, not yours. It has nothing to do with you. However, that you are an open, loving, caring, affectionate person who's giving them the time of day. And so you're good, pure. And so it is you that becomes the ideal landing place for their insecurity. It's their inability to take responsibility and accountability. So oftentimes they're giving it to the most willing recipient, the next closest individual, the most significant person, who really this channel could repair those very issues with, they will damage that very channel. It's really amazing, the pushing away and the hurting of the very healing source that goes on in projection. It's oftentimes very precise. In other words, the message of the projection is oftentimes very akin to and aligned with the insecurity that has been harbored and buried deep within the individual who is projecting onto you as a form of manipulation, in a way of dealing with their issues. And so a lot of people who go through this projection, they're like, I must be a terrible person. I'm horrible. These feelings of being falsely accused, and people oftentimes feel very helpless in the midst of these experiences. They feel that they have, nothing, they can't get a word in. They have nothing on their side that can gain them any ground. They don't have any recourse to discussion. They end up taking on all the hurt, all the blame, and this person just continues on and on and on. And you really feel that there's nothing that you can do to get clear, get through and clarify, and come to amends. And you have to be the bigger person. You have to be the wiser. You have to be able to identify what projection is, and you need to be able to let that individual come to terms with their own issues, no matter how difficult that is. In other words, oftentimes you're wanting to match energies, like with like. The person comes at you, with false accusations and words of fighting, words of hurt. And oftentimes people want to be reactive. Take the bait, as I say, take the carrot, fight fire with gasoline. And basically then there's this big blow up. And then, things are just, it's a going toe to toe. It becomes a battle of the egos. Nobody wins. It just makes everything look ugly, get very ugly quickly. And so when you are up against projection, the best thing you can do is just be calm and walk away. And it is what it is, and then move on and be happy. Because the projection is only going to hurt those other people's. And unfortunately, its intention is to push and to hurt. And it's because this individual does not have the resources within them to deal with their own issues in a graceful manner, unfortunately. And so you must let them go, but namely for yourself, do not take on the smear campaign. Do not take on the harsh words. Do not own it. Do not process it. Do not absorb. Don't take it in and make it part of your I am. That is really one of the main problems I feel that people make, is that they take on too much of this as their own and their own qualities. They don't have, the boundaries that need to be set up to be able to distinguish and differentiate. So knowing this to be the case, separate yourself, your own energy, and step back a little bit and just let it blow aside. Don't fight back. Don't try to process or, try to give them a rescue. Don't try to rescue the person of projection, because it'll usually result you, into the embodiment of what it is that they're falsely accusing you of. So it's like setting you up. It's once again, I've given this example before. Let's say there's a woman on a train and she's got her 4 children, and she's terrified that, that they're going to run away or they won't listen. So she brings a ruler on the train. And even though the kids are behaving, slapping the kids' hands, you're bad, sit down. And they're already sitting down, they're already behaving. So she's projecting her fears, her unwanted outcome onto the children. You're bad, and then the kids then, who are just sitting quietly just start crying. It's a projection. It's a physiological expression and reaction due to these unwanted feelings. In other words, this individual, this, single parent mother, who's then creating the very scenario that she's afraid of, creating bad children, who are angry. So, having witnessed this, you can, if you look at your own experiences, I think you can understand that the false accusations are oftentimes originated within the source of that individual, very closely and precisely aligned with the very issue that they are feeling vulnerable, insecure, or scared of. And then see how that's really within them. And eventually, they're going to have to come to terms with this reality. And they're going to need to be able to see things more clearly. And oftentimes it takes confronting, and confronting oftentimes means going no contact. Or, and then also not tolerating this behavior. You cannot simultaneously project this onto me and expect, in other words, this, you cannot, if you put up with it, you're rewarding it and it's going to continue. So you need to very much communicate to the person who's projecting, this is not tolerable. Okay, this is not going to, I'm not going to stand for this. We're not going to stand for this. And if that, then this, and then the next steps. And making it very clear in no, shades of gray terms that this is going to be tolerated. It has to be a zero tolerance. You can't put up with it. And so that you then will be able to gain confidence and self-trust and really clarity of truth in your position and empowerment when you do this. And then go no contact. In other words, don't put up with, walk away from that behavior. Just be, make yourself scarce. Walk away. I am out of here. And not done, you don't need to, you're a mess, I'm leaving you. You don't need to give any words. It's just cool and calm, walk away. These are times when actions speak louder than words. So you need to be able to get your body into action. And then be the bigger person, take the higher road. Don't take on that projection and that negativity as your own. If you have made the mistake of doing that in the past, that was a lesson learned. That was in the past. However, now I know better. And however, now I'm no longer I'm no longer making that mistake. I've learned the lesson and I'm all the wiser. I'm all the stronger. And, and just say, things, are too toxic right now. I need to take some time off. I need to take some time away, and so be it. And so take some time away. Take some time for yourself. You are not going to be present. Birthdays, holidays, whatever it is. If you're at the workplace and this is going on, I need, some time off. I need a hiatus. I need to change departments. You need to get out of that and stop taking on other people's blame as your own. You can do this unequivocally. It will be the solution. And you hold your head up high and know that you're not going to allow yourself to be painted into a corner or painted into a person with which you are not. And unequivocally, it's very important to stand firm and stand your ground when you're doing this. And reinforce this. And then begin to ask yourself in these situations and building up your self-trust. What would someone who trusts themselves do in this situation? What would someone who trusts themselves do in this situation? Begin to ask yourself these questions and stay with this self-inquiry basis. Also, what would someone who loved themselves do in this situation? These are and we're going to go more into those questions, but particularly when you're working on clarifying the mud or, trying to, clarify that enmeshment and get those boundaries. Boundaries are defined by a feeling, and that feeling often is one of respect and acknowledgement and validation. That is an energetic boundary. So it's something you can feel and sense. It's when somebody gives you time to talk, they respond. Those are good signs of boundaries, that somebody is giving you your space, responding to you, having a discourse, a two-way. And, so unequivocally, begin to make that your boundary and your standard. In other words, this is what I require. It's not just what I want, it is what I require. This is required. It's not, this is a mandatory. So you need to be able to also say that. This is what I require. I'm doing what is required. And if you need to make that your self-talk and understand that and process that within, so you can then enforce it and then have the behaviors, the actual actions to back it up. This is your buddy. Peace and harmony with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out.